He walked in like the rules didn't apply to him. Hoodie up, tattoos on his peeking neck, an arrogant, lazy smile that said he'd been there before, in courts like this before, and never paid for anything he did. Behind him, the benches moved as 8 members of his gang slid into the front rows of the auditorium. Court. Same colors, same appearance, same slow and deliberate attitude. The sheriff saw them enter and felt his hand move a little closer to his belt. But the man on the platform, Judge Frank Caprio, didn't move at all. He simply observed. The gang member arrived at the defense table, looked at the judge, and did the only thing which made the whole room gasp. He took his traffic ticket, crumpled it once in, he shook his hand and then threw it onto the judge's bench like it was trash. The paper he slipped, spun, and stopped just inches from Caprio's clasped hands. The gang member snorted. "We don't pay for these," he said, loud enough for the first few rows to hear. Behind him, his group laughed. One of them murmured, "Show him what's up, Gio." Someone in the gallery whispered, "Oh my God." But Caprio, he didn't flinch. He tried to grab the ticket. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. He simply looked at the crumpled paper as if it were a stone thrown into a very deep lake, calm, measured, dangerous. "You're seeing just punishment, and today you're going to see what happens when a man who believes the idea that street power is everything leads to him issuing a fine to the wrong judge. If you believe no one is above the law, subscribe now, because this is just the beginning." The secretary, he cleared his throat. "State of Rhode Island versus Giovanni Cruz," he read. "Multiple charges, driving reckless, assault on an elderly person, intimidation, failure to yield the right-of-way to an elderly person, pedestrian in a crosswalk, and contempt of previous court orders. Giovanni." He slumped into his chair as if it were his own living room sofa. He put his boots up on the defense table. The front row of his gang smiled arrogantly, their arms crossed over their robust chests. One of them looked directly. He looked at the old man sitting quietly in the witness's bench and smiled. His eyes, Caprio followed that look. Then he spoke. "Mr. Cruz," he said in a firm voice, "take the boots off the table." Guy didn't look at him. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling, and she let out a small laugh. "I think I'm fine like this," she said. "They're lucky that—" even if he had come. A sharp inhalation swept through the courtroom. The sheriff stepped forward. "Put your feet down," he ordered. He turned his head slowly, and she looked at the officer as if she were deciding whether to get up, hit him, or spit on him. Instead, she smiled. "Me? Are you going to give me another fine?" he asked. "We didn't pay those either." His group laughed. Between his teeth, the disrespect was so thick you could taste it. Caprio didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten to arrest him. He simply turned a page in the file in front of him. "Very good," he said softly. Then we proceeded. And that was the first moment the room realized something. It wasn't ignoring the lack of respect. He was accumulating it. According to the report, Caprio began. He was recorded on the night of March 14th, driving at 55 miles per hour in a pedestrian crossing marked with "the limit is set at 15. He looked up. "Is that correct?" Guy shrugged. "Speedometers lie," he said. "Old people exaggerate." The judge continued. "At that same pedestrian crossing," he said, "a 78-year-old Vietnam veteran was using the pedestrian signal to cross the street." She let that sentence hang in the air for a second. Then she asked calmly, "Is that part also a exaggeration?" Gio ran her tongue over her teeth. "I saw an old man," she said. "I shouldn't have. I was on the road. I honked the horn. He froze. That's his problem, not mine." A low murmur erupted behind him. Someone whispered, "Wow." Caprio glanced to the right. On the bench of according to witnesses, the old man was sitting calmly, his wrist in a cast, bandaged. Still visible near his 100, a simple dress shirt buttoned carefully over shoulders that once they carried 40 pounds of equipment through the jungle heat. "Sir," Caprio said gently, "please state your name for the record." The man cleared his throat. Robert Ramirez, Your Honor, he said. Most people call me Bobby. Mr. Ramirez, Caprio continued, were you crossing the street that night? Yes, sir, the veteran replied. The light. He said, walk. So I walked. He lifted his cast slightly. The next thing I remember, he said with a calmness that was painful to hear, is that I was on the pavement. Caprio nodded, then he turned to Gio. Mr. Cruz, he said, this isn't an old man. Anyone. His name is Robert Ramirez. He served in Vietnam, Bronze Star. Later, he spent 30 years as a firefighter in this city. Jay smiled disdainfully. Good, by him. He said, that doesn't pay my bills. The room tensed, twitched, blinked. He closed the physical file, then picked up a small remote control from his hand. You mentioned exaggeration, he said. Let's see how accurate the camera is. The screen on the side wall. The light in the room flickered and turned on. A view of the street at night, but not dark. Lights from the pedestrian crossing, shop signs, soft glow from the windows, the apartments, a white pedestrian crossing, a traffic light. The walking symbol was flashing. The video played. There was Bobby. He got off the sidewalk, white cane in one hand, shopping bag in the other, slow, careful. You could almost feel how many I had driven this road several times before. Then from the right side of the frame, Pharos, a dark sedan that he was coming too fast. The gang members already recognized him. He could see it in their eyes. The vehicle did not slow down before the crosswalk line. It continued moving. The court he watched as the sedan closed the distance. He watched as it crossed the intersection so close. Bobby noticed that the sleeve of his coat flapped in the wind. He stumbled. The car swerved at the last second, but not enough. The side mirror slammed into his shoulder. The old man fell. She fell sideways against the trash cans. The video froze at the moment her body hit the metal. Gasps of gas filled the air. The room, a woman in the back covered her mouth. Someone whispered, "Could I have killed him?" Gio shifted in her chair. The light was in yellow, he murmured. Okay. Caprio rewound the clip 3 seconds and paused it. The walking symbol was glowing, bright white. This isn't yellow, Mr. Cruz, Caprio said quietly. This is walk. He pressed play again. This time he let the audio play, the honking. They echoed through the court's loudspeakers. Then a young male voice, irritated. Get out of the road, old man. Bang, the trash cans. They vibrated. The camera captured a moan. Then the same male voice. I knew that you'd be paralyzed. Look at it. Someone pick it up. I'm late. The video. It was cut off. The silence in the room after that was different. Now not only tension, anger, real, personal anger. If you're watching this and that phrase, I'm late. After a veteran falls to the ground, it made something burned in your chest. You are not alone. And if you think men like this never, they should simply pay a fine and leave. Subscribe to Fair Punishment to avoid this. Don't miss how this ends, because we haven't even reached the worst part yet. Caprio lowered the remote control. Mr. Ramirez, he said softly. How much? How long was he on the ground before help arrived? The veteran took a breath. It felt like an eternity, she said. A few minutes, maybe. I tried to get up, but my arm wouldn't respond, and the driver got out of his vehicle. Caprio asked. Bobby's jaw tightened only slightly. Not because of me, he said. He got out to check his bumper first. That landed like a punch. One of the members of Gio's own group, he looked away. Even they had their limits. Caprio continued. Did he, excuse me, he asked. No, sir, the veteran replied. Me, he called her an old fool and told everyone he didn't have time for this. Then he left before the ambulance arrived. Gio shrugged. People are dramatic, he said. He was sitting down when I left. Caprio looked for another page. Let's see what the ambulance report says, he replied. He adjusted his glasses and read. Patient admitted with a fracture of wrist injury, shoulder contusion, signs of mild concussion. He recommends observation and monitoring. He looked up again. Mr. Cruz, he said in a voice of steel enveloped in velvet. How many fractures would he have suffered? Convinced to stay? The gang member's smile faltered for the first time. Not much, not enough. so that someone outside the front rows would notice, but Caprio saw it. He always does. The judge left the report. Up to this point, he said, we have speeding, we have disobedience to a pedestrian signal, we have physical injuries to a 78-year-old veteran, and we have his decision to leave the scene. Let the list land point by point. Then her tone changed barely, but that's not where her biggest problem lies. Guy lay back down again, forcing back his smile. My biggest problem, he said, is that they act as if an old man is more important than me. He said it casually, but the words were like gasoline. He could feel the room getting warmer. Caprio's eyes narrowed. Fraction. Officer, he said quietly to the sheriff, has the images of the body camera footage from the day of the arrest. Yes, Your Honor, the sheriff replied. Let's listen to it, Caprio said. New video. This time at chest level, the world had bounced slightly with each step. We saw Giovanni again, this time at the It Was Daylight, on a narrow street behind a corner shop. His gang surrounded him like a cage. Let go. An officer stood in front of him, his voice firm but polite. He missed his court date twice, the officer said in the recording. We have an order, Mr. Cruz. Turn around. The camera captured his face, Gio writhing. You think your little notes scare me? She snapped. Do you know who I'm hanging out with? She gave a... He stepped closer. The officer stood his ground, so Gio pushed him hard. The officer's gaze jerked to the side of the screen. Several people in the courtroom shuddered, as if they had been pushed. Gio's voice roared from the speakers. If you mess with me again, I'll have your family move out of this city by morning, you understand? Real threat, real words, real badge. The images ended. The sheriff stopped the playback. The courtroom was no longer just seeing a gang member with attitude. They were looking at someone who pushed an authority figure, mocked a veteran, and treated families like pawns. Change. And for your audience, that combination is a magnet for anger. If this is the moment when you'd hit the like button out of frustration. Imagine what's coming next. Then, because Capri hasn't yet played his strongest card, Capri intertwined his hands. Mr. Cruz, he said, do you remember making that statement? To the officer? Gio snorted. I say a lot of things, he muttered. The people he knows, I'm not serious half the time. Some of his group laughed, faintly. Caprio ignored the noise. There is a difference, he said calmly, between to vent and intimidate. He took a breath, and unfortunately for you, there's more. Reached a smaller page attached to the back of the file. After his arrest, he continued, he was transported in a patrol car to the station. The car had a microphone in it. The board was active all the time. Gio frowned. What? He said, they can't record me like that. I wasn't even in court yet. Caprio raised an eyebrow. You were in custody, he said. Officers documented their procedure. And this court has the audio. He gestured to the bailiff. Please, play the final note. The bailiff pressed a button. The courtroom loudspeakers hissed. Gently, then they cleared. For a moment, all that could be heard was the hum of an engine. Then the voice of Gio echoed in the room, casual, conceited, completely unaware that anyone other than the driver could listen to him. Dude, this is a joke, he said in the recording. Caprio can't do a my boys will take care of this. We don't pay fines, we don't answer anyone. Someone in the gallery actually whispered, oh my God. The recording continued. As soon as it's out, Gio's voice became sharper. Now let's take an example. The old man keeps talking. He falls again. The police officer who arrested me, we know where to park. These people forget who's in charge on the streets. The audio cut out. The ensuing silence was heavier than any sound. Caprio left the page. When he spoke, his voice was softer than before. Mr. Cruz, he said, throwing your fine on this platform was not your first act of disrespect. He held Gio's gaze. It was only the first time he'd done it in a room full of people who can finally do something about it. Guise? He moved now for real. His boots came down from the table. He straightened up. That's just talk, he insisted. Everyone talks like that. He can't send me to the jail for a conversation. Her own words sounded weaker than she intended. Caprio didn't raise his voice. The audio, he responded, was played in front of a 78-year-old man whom he pushed into the eye, already have an officer who has been threatened by a community that is tired of him. They say the gangs are in charge. He straightened a stack of papers with careful precision. He also added, it will be part of the record when he addresses his contempt. One of the members of Gio's group finally broke down. This is a shit, he muttered under his breath. The sheriff turned around. Watch out, he snapped. Caprio raised a hand slightly and the room quieted down. He refocused on the accused. Mr. Cruz, he said, has disrespected this court, placed and endangered a veteran, threatened an officer, and boasted of being the owner of the streets. He paused. For their sake, he added, I hope that understand that this court is not afraid of you. It fears what happens if men like you continue to believe they are owners of everything they touch. He took one last measured breath. It leads, he said, to the consequences. The word felt like a hammer blow before land. If you're watching this and you think men like Giovanni should leave, then you're mistaken. With just a fine, this is where you and Judge Caprio disagree. If you believe they shouldn't, that there must come a time when arrogance finally crashes against a wall, make sure you're subscribed to Fair Punishment, because what happens in the next few minutes is the reason why this channel exists. This is where we stop telling ourselves that the power of the street, he always wins, and we see what happens when he doesn't. The word consequences. It floated in the air like another kind of silence, not the awkward kind, not the kind nervous, the kind of guy who comes in right before a verdict. Giovanni tried to laugh, but it came out a weak laugh. What other fines? He said. Suspending my license. Not even. I drive my own car half the time. His group smiled again, trying to revive their bravado, trying to pretend that the videos, audio, and ambulance report did not happen. Caprio saw all of that, the fear, the acting. The men in the first row who were suddenly a little less sure that this was just a traffic court. He crossed his hands over the file. Mr. Cruz, he said, stand up. The room changed. People straightened up. The sheriff took another step closer. Gio. He stood up slowly, squaring his shoulders as if preparing for a fight on a staircase, not to a court ruling. He lowered his chin. Go ahead, he said. Do what you have to do. Caprio nodded once. Oh, I will, he replied. This court, he began. Caprio isn't going to pretend this was just a speeding mistake or a bad day or a misunderstanding. He marked each point with his fingers. Almost it struck a pedestrian in a crosswalk. It injured a 78-year-old veteran. It left him on the ground. He threatened officers. He threatened their families. And when he came here and was given the opportunity to take responsibility, he threw his fine onto this platform and told this court, we don't pay these. She looked him straight in the eyes. He was right about one thing, she added in a low voice. He's not going to pay a fine. A murmur rippled through the benches. Gio's jaw tightened. So what? She snapped. He's going to give a speech and send me home. Caprio's eyes hardened, though his tone never rose. He didn't say, I'm going to make sure your house is the only place I don't see. For a while, he turned slightly toward the veteran. Mr. Ramirez, he said, could you stand up as well, please? The old man slowly stood up, his wrist in a cast hanging carefully by his side. He looked small next to Gio, smaller than the gang's row, smaller than the officers, but the respect of the room shifted towards him like gravity. Sir, Caprio continued, he told us he served this country. He ran toward buildings ablaze throughout this city. He crossed a street he had the right to cross, under a light that told him it was safe. Sure, he looked at the accused again and was treated like a nuisance. He concluded by, a man who believes fear is a form of currency. He turned all his attention to Giovanni. This is what's going to happen. Mr. Cruz, you will serve 30 days in jail for your contempt of this court and for his threats against the officer and his family. The sentence, 30 days in jail. They landed like a punch. One of Gio's group members whispered, Hey, what? Caprio continued. He will complete 100 hours of community service, specifically at a veteran center approved by this agency. Court. He won't choose the easiest job there. He won't sit in a back room. He'll show up to time and will look men like Mr. Ramirez in the eye as he carries his groceries, mops his floors, and listens to his stories. Gio opened her mouth, but no words came out, and she will pay the price. Full restitution for Mr. Ramirez's medical bills and damages. Caprio continued without interruption. Every penny. If that means working double shifts when I'm released, then she'll be working double shifts. She let that sink in. Furthermore, he said, looking now beyond the accused to the front row of gang members, as a condition of his release, he will have no contact with gang associates, direct or indirect, in person or by phone, on the street or online. Any violation of that condition and those 30 days will become much, much longer. The line of the gang moved, discomfort passing between them like a cold current. As long as this sentence is in effect, Caprio is finished. You have no say in anything. Giyoshi swallowed. You can't tell me who I can talk to, she said. But the struggle continues. It had drained from his voice. Caprio raised an eyebrow. I just did it, he replied, and also I can make it happen. He leaned forward, lowering his voice more gently, which somehow made every word heavier. You entered this court thinking that this court was afraid of him, said. He thought he could throw his hat in the ring, fines, threatening a veteran, threatening officers, and hiding behind a group sitting in the front row. He nodded toward the benches. Look at them, Mr. Cruz. Gio looked back, almost against his willpower. For the first time all day, their group didn't look like a wall. They looked like 8 men trying to decide whether they wanted to follow him into whatever came next or walk away silently. Caprio's voice cut through his thoughts. Throwing away that ticket, he said, wasn't his worst mistake. He paused. To think that the court belonged to him, he continued. It was. He lay back. The bailiff said, You can proceed. The sheriff approached with practiced calm. Hands behind the back, he ordered. For a second, just a second, Gio. He hesitated. He had fled from the police before. He had hidden in alleyways. He faced men who weren't afraid to hit, but none of it helped him. Now, the wives of metal clicked around their wrists. The sound was small, the impact not. The gallery watched as the same hands that pushed a veteran against the trash cans were now immobilized behind his back. His group shifted uncomfortably. One of them, he lifted himself half an inch from his seat, then sat back down when he realized that nobody was moving with him. Caprio observed everything and said a final phrase that would follow this clip wherever it went online. Respect, he said. You win, Mr. Cruz, you don't throw. The camera captured Gio's face when those words hit him hard. The smug smile vanished. The arrogance disappeared. Only a hooded man who had finally discovered a room where he wasn't in charge. If you're still watching this and you felt something when those handcuffs closed, have you ever wished just once that a man like this wouldn't get enough time? Compliance and a small fine, that's why fair punishment exists. Subscribe so you don't miss the cases where the abuser doesn't win, because this story doesn't end when the side door closes. Reality begins there. 3 weeks later, on a gray morning, the bus stopped in front of the Providence Veterans Assistance Center. The door opened with a hiss. The first man to descend the steps had a cast on his wrist. Not on his wrist this time. That one had healed, except on his knee, tucked under his jeans. Bobby Ramirez moved slowly, leaning on the handrail. Behind him came another figure without capucha, esta vez sin pandilla, solo una sudadera gris sencilla, un par de jeans desgastados y ojos que escaneaban la acera como si estuviera buscando salidas que no iba a usar.